and welcome to the Super League show. Yes, you are not watching the scrutineer. I am here instead of Jake, grudgingly and equally. I'm sure that Jake would love to be here. Unfortunately, can't be, but we plod on anyway. I have been allowed back. Yes, after last time, they have allowed me back out of my cage to come into the Super League show. Thank you very much. I'm still joined by the usual people of Ben and Kacper, though. Say hello, chaps.
Hello.
Hello.
All in a lovely visual as well, as always now for this season. Fantastic. Here for SimNews.TV. Super League show. If you haven't watched us before, we're here wrapping up everything there is to know about the WTF1 GPVWC Superleague. That's a mouthful, isn't it? But it's an incredible series. So much going on, and if you haven't watched it before, crack back on the shows here, or subscribe below, and you'll find them all going forwards. But we're here looking at round 6. If you've not been joining us before, where have you been? There's been 5 rounds already. The season is well underway, and we are cracking on with everything that's been happening. There's an awful lot changed. Drivers come in and out. So Ben, what changed this time out? Who jumped in and out of the seats that we already know?
Yes, there was quite a few actually for Canada. A double lineup change over at Eval. They had Mike Bell and Jason Muscat step in, and I believe that was quite short notice. I know both Argo and Wright were unfortunately occupied for the evening's racing, so both Mike and Jason stepped in. Of course, they both raced in Super Cup on the Wednesday night, so they were already quite familiar with the Montreal track. So they made the temporary step up to cover there at Eval. Chris Butcher stepped in at Hawkeye as well in his reserve role. Stepped in there, and I believe that was for what would have been Fran Lopez, but I believe he's been replaced now as well. So he's filling in that seat temporarily. We also saw Manuel Martini come in after doing both the Formula Challenge and Super Cup race in the same week. He stepped in at Red Archer temporarily, so he was there on the Thursday night, as well as Mark Veit stepping at Mad Cape as well. So quite a few runs and riders changing there, and also one point to note, only one Adonis this time.
I think that's our first one we've lost, not had a show up all year so far, actually, I think, isn't it? If I remember rightly. So it's a bit of a shame that started now, but it's pretty good to get to round 6. Martini, I think, yeah, if you've watched any of the races, you'll have seen him previously, but my goodness, I think the guy must have just slept in the garage for 3 days, to be honest, and just crashing whatever car turned into the garage he got in it. So fair play to him. Whereas Super League, so much going on with tyres. We always found, I know it's your favourite subject, Kacper, so I'm coming to you. I'm basing this on last year.
I saw those eyes roll. I saw them.
Oh yes. Those lovely tyres. Kacper is an absolute massive fan of the hard tyres. Did they get used here? Who picked what, and what conversations would that have had for the race then, Kacper?
Well, what I've seen in the race is that actually there wasn't that much in terms of the different I think some teams may have chosen, some teams, as in Hawkeye, Storm, Flag to Flag, Adonis, and Mad Cape, chose not to pick soft tires, which may have been a mistake because we've seen some drivers go for the soft tires in the race, if I recall correctly. But I don't. Having medium tires was interesting. However, we also had Eval and we also had SRS on ultra softs and mediums, which is very odd considering super softs were very quite a useful tire this race as well. And I think the remainder of the teams was on super soft, ultra soft, super softs, and softs, which kind of seems like a logical choice now that we look at it, especially with very low tire wear rate this race.
Yeah, it's very 2017 of all the teams, really. A lot of them to pick all the 3 softest tyres. But still, nice to see quite a few teams there changing and mixing it up as well.
Yep.
Everyone did have the ultra soft tyre, though, which made it quite competitive in qualifying. We haven't seen that all year so far, that everyone's picked the fastest tyre to do qualifying on, but everyone did. So our qualifying results, basically, started off. So we ended up with an ACR lockout on the front row with Alex beating Risto to 1 and 2. Dennis Jordan in the Adonis carrying on his very good season so far in 3rd in the grid. Hawkeye of Ricardo Costa in 4th, which is a great start for him in probably I think his highest starting position this year, off the top of my head. Epic and Jeffrey Fournier continuing their good season as well in their debut year, starting in 5th. Flowing Gaia back up more where we expected him to be in the Street Fighter in 6th. I normally gave him the top 5, but we're with the top 10. Jared Boyer Milan in the other Epic. Tom Parker also in the Evolution, and Chris Butcher in the Hawkeye, and Petter Burlap in the Edge in 10th. Those guys you'd expect to be a bit higher up, really, I suppose. But anything shock you out of that, Ben, altogether with the qualifying?
I don't think there was too big a drop. I mean, it's nice to see Florian Gaia back up there in the top 10. He's unfortunately had a bit of a tough run of form to the start of this season, so nice to see him find a bit of pace. Both Epics in the top 10, really good for them. Obviously, in their debut season, they've been doing really well. Really impressive start of the season for them. Same with Evolution as well. Dennis Jordan P3 and Tom Parker P8, so really good showing from both of them. And Chris Butcher sneaking their P9 on what is effectively his Super League qualifying debut there. So nice to see him sneaking that. I mean, the qualifying was slightly affected because the last sort of 5 minutes of the session were rained off. We had a sun shower come in, so not everybody could really get their best laps out. But no, still a really interesting qualifying session.
Quite interesting to see actually who had the forefront or had done the research, knowing that actually maybe it will rain, we'll get the laps in early, because it was certainly half a qualifying session, wasn't it, really? And when it rains in the qualifying session, there was a bit of a gamble who's going to be at the top of the standings, because any other times we've seen, midway through a qualifying session, can have anybody at the top of the standings, really. So it could have been a very, very different grid, but surprisingly, it was kind of where you'd kind of expect everyone to be, I think, even though we had the rain, which led us to quite a good race, though. So obviously that's the way they started out. So looking through, I've lost that. That's not clever, is it? Well done, me. Oh, a little bit rusty here, people. Come on, I'm used to just doing this on my own. It's much easier. So, so forgive me.
You don't have the pressure of us two watching you.
No, well, I'll send you. I'm looking at you. Your lovely faces there, they are. Yeah, so I know it's like having friends. This isn't. It's great. Race. So we hit the race. Everyone went out. It had dried up though for the race. I say nobody. Everyone basically went on to the dry tyres to start the race. We did have one exception in one of our new teams in the flag to flag, deciding though to pit at the end of the formation lap. To change onto the dry tyres, and no one actually started the race on it, but he did lose his grid position. Hutchinson, I believe that one was. So that was a little bit, maybe also got a bit caught out there, but no harm done, really. I say no harm done. We did end up with a bit of chaos, though, at the start, to put it mildly. It is Canada. It is a little bit awkward, turns 1 and 2. But Ben, what on earth happened there?
It's hard to say, really. It looked like I think it was Jeffrey Fournier and Dennis Jordan just had a little bit of a coming together through the second part of that sort of first complex. And it was, it's just one of those racing incident things, a bit too close in the first lap there. Unfortunately, that meant both of them tangled and started blocking the track. And then at that point, you've got all the cars hurtling in, and it just wasn't really going to go well at all. So quite a bit of bumping and banging. Most people got through it relatively unscathed. There was a little bit of an altercation at the back between both the Storm cars of De Waal and Clont, I think, and Jarl Tyne got caught up in there, who was starting towards the back with a penalty from Monaco. So that hindered his progress quite a lot, and that obviously held them up on that first lap there. So just a little bit messy. It's always quite tough at Canada. That first couple of corners is it's not very nice with 28 cars hurtling through it.
Now that you say that as well, though, as far as I can remember, Fournier was complaining about damage for the car for at least the first bit of the race, not for entirely the rest of the race. So, I mean, it had some effect on some drivers until the end of the race, basically.
Yeah, it's quite hard to see, I suppose. If it's a very small amount of damage, most people can still, these good drivers that we've got in this grid can make it look like they haven't really got any damage. So it's kind of hard to tell what's going on. But yeah, I mean, even the guys on the pit lane got involved in that first lap accident. It's a bit of a shame, really. But actually, it didn't let the guys out front completely run away with it, although there was quite a gap just started forming. We saw a few little bits and pieces going on with Siebel carrying on at the front, doing rather well there with Capit chasing him, but seemingly Alex was pulling out that gap. The guys behind, though, there was some early incidents going on, particularly around the chicanes and bits and pieces like that, Kacper. Care to elaborate on a few of those?
Yeah, I remember Tom Parker being quite involved in at least one of those accidents. I think it was lap 3 or thereabouts in the third and fourth corners in the chicane, basically. I think he went offline and rejoined very dangerously and ended up, rather than involving just himself, just him having such a clumsy rejoin ended up involving another 3 cars in a collision, even more, have barely getting past without any damage. But I think it was it's something that needs to be looked at from Tom, because that was just not on, for example.
Yeah, I think he got a bit unlucky there. You know, he got offline, unfortunately. It was still actually quite wet offline because of the shower. The actual racing line was dried up. It was just one of those things where he just drifted slightly offline into turn 3, and at that point you've lost the car. He's getting straight across the grass, and then as you say, the rejoin wasn't really the best, to be honest, from Tom. I think he knows better.
Working a hard place at times, though, isn't it? I mean, you guys are racers. If you spin and end up, I'm going to be stuck on the apex with a lot of cars coming at you. Do you stay or do you move or do you?
Oh, exactly,
I don't know what you do at that stage. It is awkward. You're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. In this case, it didn't work out well, so I suppose you get damned, don't you? Unfortunately. But not only that, we did see quite a few guys that were a little bit further back from the front too, also having good pace as well and making early charges to get themselves on the podium, really. Particularly, I'm thinking with people like Milan and Costa and Fournier. But equally, them all sort of getting mixed up and maybe hindering each other slightly. Not too sure what you think on that, Ben.
Yeah, it's both the Epic cars were sort of tripping over each other in the first sort of 5-10 laps. I think it was Milan who was just that tad bit faster than Fournier. Maybe, as Kacper rightly pointed out, actually Fournier struggling with a little bit of damage at the start of the race, and it was quite clear to see that Fournier sort of just moved over coming up into the final corner to let Milan pass. So maybe some kind of team order going on there. There's not really anything in the rules against that, unless it's final laps. But let's not get into that, because that's a whole different ball game there. But
I think you might have an opinion on that, might you?
Well, yeah, there you go. But that's something for another day. But no, I think it's quite clear to see Epic play the team order there, and it was for the good of both race there for both drivers, and in the end it's helped them to a good result. So it was quite a bit of close battling at the start.
I mean, it's interesting to see team orders if that is the case. But if someone did have damage, I think that's legitimately the drivers may have done that between themselves. And have team orders, it's fair enough.
I would say there's nothing to say it was an order from above as well. We don't know if it was just drivers, so it's fair enough.
Yeah. Another one, Kacper, is that we had our double world champion Fiduk having what I think is probably his first disconnect ever.
That is very disappointing, but to be honest, Fiduk was already complete and utter shadow of himself this race. I think he was, I think he was there in the top 15. I think like 12th or 13th. But for somebody who's a double champion of the Super League, it's just not quite good enough. And it seems like, to be honest, the entire Nordston is actually basically a shade of itself, former self from the last 2 years. But what we've also seen from Nordston is that they usually bounce back in the second half of the season. So Fiduk may jumping back in there later on. We're gonna have to see. But Fiduk very unlucky with having his first disconnect. However, I think he did come back and did continue running later.
Yeah, Fiduk did finish the race, so all credit to him. If you have a disconnect and you can come back in, then brilliant, I suppose, to crack on and carry on and see if you can get any points out of it. That is a racer. I respect that. And he did have quite a good Monaco. Did he can get his 6th at Monaco? No, Monaco's a bit different. But qualifying down in 14th is not really, he's going to have wanted to start the race. Just shows the sort of pace issue there, maybe, like you would say. Maybe Nordston are missing something at the moment. But we did see last year they were potentially missing a little bit of something, and after the summer break, came back really strong, potentially. So, and Fiduk was part of that team, even back then. So hopefully we can see them back at the front as well again very soon. But yeah, probably one to forget this time around, I think, for Fiduk, unfortunately, except for having to go at his internet provider. So then we get to the end of lap 15. We get to the sort of start of the pit stop window, it turns out, with these ultra soft tyres. And the sort of first to jump out of the two that are sort of battling at the front is Kacper. And then Siebel follows a couple of laps later with different tyre strategies. There's an awful lot of others as well that are sort of pitting around that sort of time. It's interesting actually this time round. I know obviously a little bit biased as part of the team. I'm going to throw it to you guys to see if you can know what's going on. But normally we'd see the lead driver take the role and normally take the first stop. I think that was a bit of, did that surprise people, do you think?
To me, it appeared that Risto was trying to play like an undercut effectively on Alex. It was quite clear that Risto was struggling in that first stint. He wasn't quite matching Alex on pace. So naturally, at that point, you've got to do something different with your strategy. So, Bristo's pitted a couple of laps early. He's trying to look for a bit of clean air there, try and get a bit of pace on those new tyres, try and catch up to Siebel when he has to make that pit stop. At least that's what it looked like to me. Obviously, Mike, you're going to know more than us on that one. So, yeah, but at least to me, it looked like a bit of an undercut tactic.
Well, yeah, they're allowed to race, so pretty much, yeah. Obviously, they were in the chat together, so they do know what's going on. But at the same time, it's, well, yeah, if you want to try and race them, if you think that's the better way of doing it, and of course, there's a range of strategies that we put forward ahead of the time, which they can choose from. Because quite a few are very close, particularly as the race gets away, depending on where the gaps are as well to pull, to come out from the pits. But Kacper, going on something not so great at that point, by lap 28, we'd seen the end of Mad Cape for this race.
Yeah, they're not having a great season now, are they? Lap 28, both of them are out. I can't now remember if both of them were by accidents or some disconnects. Either way, they were both out by lap 28, and I think there was some talk about them saving engines again.
Well, the interesting one is actually one of the drivers pulled into the pits and retired to save the engine, we're told.
Which is interesting considering they're not doing very well as is already, and saving engines this early in the season is not a great sign. And to be honest, at this point, can we say that they may? Is this the early signs of them basically not being here next year, maybe? Because they really don't look like a competitive team right now.
They've got to change a lot, haven't they, if they want to be here next season? Especially,
I wanted to ask you guys on that as well.
Yeah.
So before, with that stopping for the engine side of stuff, does that mean they've given up on this year because they don't want to buy the new engines at the end of the year, so they're not going to spend the money, or they either don't have any money, or is it a whole thing of they use that fresh engine in Monaco and that's a huge error that they're now paying for now?
I'd lean towards the second one. I don't particularly see how they could have run out of money given they started development quite late last season. We had the whole question of why were they not developing for the first few races last season. So I don't really see it as a money issue. I would lean towards they're trying to make up for their mistakes at Monaco, which still to this day baffles me as to why they decided to take 100% engines at Monaco. No idea. Yeah. And that partially cost them here as well because they were one of the only teams without 100% engines. So maybe it was that. It's hard to say, to be honest, but I think on current form and current performance, I can't really see them sticking past next season.
Sadly, that does sound to be the case. I mean, what my worry is this now going to be a spate of, if there's drivers that are out of positions and out of the points, are they going to just start retiring the engines to save it for later on down the line? If you're not in a championship hunt, if you're not one of the top few teams that need points every round, is that going to be a legitimate strategy? That's not great for the league. If that's something that kicks in, I think potentially people need to start looking at that around the rules, maybe, guys. I don't know, just throwing it out there.
I think that cannot be mainstay in a league like this. I think we need to keep the drivers running as long. I don't think we can have teams suddenly just pull off whenever they feel like there is no race for them and just save the engine. I mean, is this proper racing that we want to see in sim racing now, where people save money by literally not racing?
Particularly about that 28.
Yeah, I guess it's maybe the pitfall with our system in the Superleague, with the money, with the engine management, with all the in-depth stuff behind the scenes, is that this does become a consideration with the racing. People. You do have to manage engines across the season. You're only just going to make it on 6. Some teams didn't last year, and they let's take a 7th or even an 8th unit, and that costs them money. So it is a consideration here, and maybe that's starting to play a bit too much into the racing side of it.
Well, in that case, maybe actually we need to congratulate Mad Cape on good engine management from a team perspective. Then very well done.
We'll see.
Might be that way around. We might be judging you too early. Apologies. Might be fantastic. If they have a fresh engine later down the line, no one else does, and they win a race out of it, I'll be eating my hat, won't I?
We all will.
Well, yeah. Yeah, okay. What else are we going on to? Joe. It does seem to be that there was a favourite place for everyone to start overtaking in this race, though. There was quite a bit of overtaking actually going on in the race. I never managed to cover an awful lot of it yet. The favourite overtaking spot being the final chicane. And particularly, that's quite a I'm going to use your hashtag here, Ben.
It's Casper's. Casper's one for this one.
Oh, well, Kacper, you go ahead then. I'll let you have the. What can we? Favourite overtaking spot. What are we calling it?
Hashtag ballsy around walls of champions.
There we go.
But yes, no, it's definitely, it was the favorite overtaking spot for a couple of reasons. DRS was obviously one of the mainstays, and you have the you can get a very good exit out of the hairpin, and if you can get your nose in there, you can really feel the draft helping you as well with it all. And you can just get yourself alongside or even ahead of another driver before you even get to turn into the chicane. And if you have the line on the inside, you are on the preferred side, and usually the driver on the outside tends to yield, or something bad tends to happen to both of them if they don't, unluckily, or at least one of them. Which yeah, so. But it's a very tough overtaking opportunity, but it's one of the only ones in high downforce race cars, I think.
Yeah, and actually most of it was quite clean from what I'd seen. There wasn't.
Yeah.
You know, considering some of the other series we'd seen, yeah, January was pretty good going. So after that, we sort of ended up with the ACR guys at the front, sort of almost running away with it, really, a little bit, and then, almost running away with it, and then something happened. Ben, I'm going to let you cover this because it's a little bit.
Yeah. So I mean, as you say, ACR were pretty much running away with it. They were dominant for most of the race. The second stint was going great, and then Risto opted to pit. And he may have come in a bit too hot into the pit entry. Very narrowly avoided completely destroying the rear end of his teammate Siebel's car at the final chicane. And in doing so,
nearly went then. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's probably a bit of a stressful pit wall at that point. But yeah, so in avoiding hitting Siebel, Risto Capit locked up a couple of the wheels coming to pit entry. Slid through the pit entry speed line backwards, just over the speed limit, stopped in the pit lane, turned round, carried on, did his pit stop, lost a couple of seconds through that, and then was going to go and carry on his merry way. Unfortunately though, he's gone in backwards and too fast into the pit lane. Now, the game gave him a stop and go penalty, and if I'm right, but correct me if I'm wrong here, Mike, I do believe you went and spoke to the race director, at the time, Chris Williamson, and asked him, we feel the stop and go is a bit too harsh. We've lost time here by stopping in the pit lane, turning around and carrying on. Can this be changed to a drive-through? Yes or no?
Well, kind of. To be honest, I went to him first, going, surely we don't get this penalty. He went in backwards. Like, what? Okay. What's going on? To which we were sort of told, well, actually, it's it has been speeding in the pit lane. A penalty needs serving, and previously someone else had also done not the same thing, but had also sped in the pit lane and had done a drive-through. So we did, but he couldn't do it in game. Had to remove it, so we had to not self-serve. He told us to, but we had to manually serve a drive-through. Okay, so which Risto promptly did within the I think within the 3 laps anyway that we had to do it in.
So naturally, at this point, you'd think case closed. Unfortunately, some drivers have questioned the decision here from the race director and from ACR, and it's currently under DC review, and we will find out a bit more in due course. Hopefully, obviously, by the time we get to the next race, it'll be nice to know. It does bring in a few questions, to be fair, about the rules. Yeah, exactly, clarity, as you say. There's a few conflicting rules here as to, there's one rule, I think, that means you have to, obviously, you can't speed in the pit lane, and you have to serve the in-game penalty, but equally, there's a rule saying you can go to the race director and ask for clarification about serving a penalty. So there is this natural conflict in the rules here. That's what's arisen out of all this, and that's why we're now having this review, and making sure it's been thoroughly checked, I guess, and we know what's going to happen going forward. So yeah, let's under review a bit. I mean, if you look at the gap that Risto had actually finishing in second, obviously Alex in first with a cracking dominant race he put on there. Risto does have about a 15-second gap back to Ricardo Costa, so if it's a time penalty applied, then I can't really see it doing much. You wouldn't expect more than 10 or 15 seconds for an extra elevation to that penalty there from a drive-through to a stop and go. So yeah, we'll see what happens come Paul Ricard.
sense, wouldn't it? I'd imagine, rather than if there's anything to give. Yeah, I think I've said my piece there.
You covered your point, yeah.
Let's move on. So you mentioned there obviously who won, but we'll carry on with a few others that as the race unfolded towards the end. Kacper, one particular team that was pretty underwhelming. Kind of said all year has been underwhelming though.
Street Fighter has been really not doing very well this year. It's interesting because Flowguyer did actually qualify quite high up, and I think it was a sixth, in fact.
Yeah.
But I have nearly a feeling that this was more due to the rain coming down and not everyone able to get their fastest laps or anything. Because if we look at the race, Flowguy has been around the top, the kind of like the edge of top 10, but always been in like the 13th, 12th, and has never had the pace to be able to go anywhere higher than that. And Ben Horrell has been just nowhere all race long. I don't think he has been anywhere in qualifying either, really. He qualified 20th. So as just Street Fighter not doing very well all season, and I don't know what's going on. But it's not a driver problem. I think I don't know what is the problem.
Well, I think maybe Mike can elaborate a bit more on this, because I know you picked Street Fighter as your doomed to fail team in your scrutineer section towards the end of that. I know it's one of the teams you highlighted for choice of upgrades. I think was one of the key points you mentioned. But yeah, maybe you can elaborate a bit more on that one.
Well, yeah, of course, if you want to see the full story, hit back on the scrutineer.
Nice plug.
Using every little bit avenue to. But no, we do go into detail on that about all the upgrades and stuff. But a little bit here, yeah, a few bits that I picked them out for. One is the bad luck that they seem to have running at the moment, and they're the only team not to have done any weight upgrade as well, at all. The only team, and normally that, even if you don't know anything about it, odds are if every other team is picking it, there's a reason why to use that. So to me, that looked at it, and the same with quite a lot of teams have done diffuser downforce as well, which they haven't done. They've done a lot of front and rear wing downforce, which does the same effect, but can unstable the car potentially more. So that it can work to your advantage if you set the car up right, but that might have been quite difficult as well, particularly here, knowing that there might have been rain, so you might have had a wet setup as well, potentially loaded or part, half dry, half. There's loads of things that could have gone into it, and it just felt that they weren't quite, based on the previous history and everything else that's gone on this year so far. They just don't look like the team that's set up to win races at the moment. The drivers have the skill potentially, but it just doesn't seem to all be working quite yet. I mean, it's the first year that this sort of team, and the first year with the new sponsor and everything that comes with that. So, yeah, maybe the expectations are higher than they should be. Ultimately, it's a team in their second year.
Yeah, exactly.
But at the same time, it is. I mean, they'll be disappointed themselves. It's not for us to tell them that. We know they're quite disappointed, although they did score points here. Yeah, so remember, scrutineer, Monday nights before the race. Right, yes, but coming on again, there was quite a good battle though. I did love this one towards the end. I have seen this, which in fact in some interesting drivers we might not have covered much before. Mainly probably down to tyres to a point. But at the same time, I enjoyed the battle for quite a number of laps, really.
Yeah, I mean, we had Pedro Gomez, Alex Cooper was in there, Jeff Fournier as well, all three battling away for about lap 42 onwards. It was a really good battle, actually, and Pedro Gomez is one we haven't really covered much on the show. He's been quietly, going about his business, scoring a few points here and there, putting a really good, solid effort there for Red Archer, and he showed some pretty good racecraft, I thought, in this little battle here. I was slightly helped and enhanced by the fact that Alex Cooper was on a slower tyre. He was on the soft tyre compared to both Gomez and Fournier, who were on the ultra softs. So there was a bit of a bottleneck being caused by Cooper over those few laps, but for the neutral, it provided really good, entertaining bit of racing. I thought Gomez and Fournier showed off some really good driving skill there to pull off some really good passes.
It's what we want to see. This is battles up and down the field. It's fantastic.
Yep.
And then if it's the tyres that make the difference, or if it just happens to be the pit strategies or what, then great. I don't mind as long as it's battling up and down the field.
Exactly.
One driver that we didn't see a lot of though, and arguably might have been because of his back of the grid, is Yao Time. So what happened here, Kacper?
Well, Tyne has just not been quite showing his usual pace here. Even in qualifying, we've seen Tyne in 11th, which is quite disappointing coming after a win from Monaco. And now he's just not been, when you watch the race, you just don't see him at all. You just don't see any overtakes, any kind of getting up there. And in the end, he has managed to have at least some battling going on with Gomez, but also had some kind of a contact, and he caused contact with Gomez on lap 61 by the look of it, and kept on battling. And what was amazing is just a lap later, after the bit of contact, I think it was in the final chicane, or in they managed to have 3 separate overtakes coming from the braking point for the hairpin all the way to turn 1. And it's just one of the most amazing battles I think I've seen. Just Gomez was visibly slower, but it was he kept on battling like as if his life depended on it. It was beautiful.
Once again, fantastic down that end of the grid. We've got DRS in play there as well. You've got different engines, you've got different car upgrades. That's kind of what keeps everything going so closely here. It's a race winner from last round, battling away, doing that sort of thing. So fantastic to see. The other Edge car that had pretty good race for one. He had a great race really, considering he started out in 10th on the grid to move on much further up. And in fact, Ben, an incredible final lap.
Exactly, yeah. Peter Burlak is someone who, going into the season and based on the preseason test, was someone we expected to be, really up there fighting for wins. And through a lot of bad luck and, not quite being happy with the car at certain tracks, Petter is not quite showing the pace I think maybe we expected. But here he looked really solid in the Edge car. He put in some great performances and great, race pace there. Maybe P10 isn't necessarily the best reflection of both him and the car, but for qualifying, but finishing P4, brilliant race I thought. And as you say, overtaking for 4th on the final lap, leave it to the last minute, but he got it in the end, and great result there for Edge. They're still just keeping with ACR, quite hard to do with what was quite a dominant display from them here, but no, I was really impressed actually by Petter, really impressed.
Yeah, I think this is the sort of result we were expecting from him when he first was announced on the first race. He had some bad luck the first few rounds, but we know the quality of this guy. From GPVWC point of view, he's a former challenge champion, but obviously people will know him from other things as well, from other series in sim racing. Incredible driver. One that I know that we need sort of, just before we go through the results, sort of link out to my scrutineer show once again. Plug once more.
Another subtle plug.
No, it's brilliant. Well, I'm here. Really, this is my payment. This is how I get paid.
Sure,
yeah. So I said in the scrutineer though that I thought that Zurich would be my team to watch this time out, and potentially get a double point score. But Kacper, was all right?
Not quite. You were off by 1 place for Wopke Hoekstra. So no, not quite. But we did have Dino Paolini up.
He's hoping for post-race penalties.
That must be a massive penalty for Risto captain of your own team.
Oh, the irony.
Oh, yes. Regardless, yes, P9 for Dino Paolini, I think is a very good sign. They're seemingly getting there. And to be fair, it is only their 6th race in Super League, which is such a difficult series, and it's such a high-level series this year. So many fantastic drivers. The teams are working as hard as I think I've ever seen Super League teams working. It's so I think they're doing okay, and I think they're gonna get better and better. But yeah, it's definitely encouraging that both of them finished either in the points and deeply in the points in the top 10, in fact, or just outside of the points for Wopke, which to be fair, it seems like he could have been there if not for just 1 or 2 errors of braking into turn 1 throughout the race, which caused him to lose a couple positions at least.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think I'm almost right with that. I'm going to give myself a near right with that. Yeah, it's not bad to predict, but no, because they are a team that we picked out purely on the fact that they seem to be developing the areas that seem to seem to be working for other teams now. They seem to have an awful strong of bad luck on both cars for most of the season so far. So at some point it's going to come together for them. I thought this could have been the one for them. It nearly was. But I think they'll probably still come away thinking, actually, that was probably a reasonable round for them. I imagine that's something to build on for next time, maybe. Considering some of the rounds they've had before, that's pretty good for them. So should we round out the full top 10 for the race? So as we've sort of alluded to already, Alex Siebel won another round there for ACL Zakspeed, with his teammate Rfactor coming home second. Ricardo Costa in third for Hawkeye. Great podium for them. Peter Burlock on that last corner of that last lap, grabbing fourth for Edge ahead of Boy Milan's Epic. Jeffrey Fournier making it 2 Epics in the top 6, coming 6th there. Jarl did make his way all the way up to 7th though from the back of the grid, so it's not, you know, all doom and gloom for Edge there. It just was, we're used to Jarl winning races now, so that's the only reason why. But otherwise, quite a good result for them. 2 cars again in the top 7. Pedro Gomez for the Red Archer, nice little result for them in that pretty decent car, but it's a good result for him coming back, having missed a couple of rounds. Dino Paolini, as we mentioned, in the Zurich, getting 9th, and Alex Cooper in the Nordschen scored 10th, which is a nice point score for the Nordschen team there. The other point scorers being Liam DeWall in the Storm, Mark Hutchinson in the Flag to Flag, Jason Muscat in the Eval, and Florian Gaia in the Street Fighter, and Dennis Jordan managing to get a point in the Evolution after what is, well, it's quite an eventful race, should we say, for those guys in the bottom of the points there. Yep. Less said the better, though, I suppose. For most of them, I think it's probably going to be one to forget for them. But if you get to the end and get some points out of it, I suppose it's worth doing, wasn't it? Really. So that was our that's our race result. I tell you what, I have forgotten to do. You can tell I'm bad at this. Pull up the standings. Ooh,
unprepared.
I can tell you who's first, but I'll get the official result, shall I? That's pretty bad if I don't do that. I could, yeah, it is pretty bad going. And this is where I find out.
See, at least you're slowly learning your role here, filling in for Jake.
Well, yes, that's true. Right, okay. Should we go through the driver standings? Thank you very much before I get anywhere else. So, that third win of the season means that Alex Siebel extends his lead in the championship now, takes over the lead of the championship now, with 95 points. Risto Capit sits in second with 91, so very close between the top 2 still. Jarl Tyne, unfortunately dropping back a bit, but 81, still very much in touch there. Jeffrey Fournier in 4th, Dennis Jordan in 5th, dropping back a little bit now. He's got a good 16-point gap to up to Fournier. Peter Burlock moving himself up into 6th, and Costa actually, even with that disqualification in round 2, has moved himself up into 7th. Liam DeWall in 8th after that promising start, seems to have been falling down a little bit, unfortunately now. David Fiduk, even with that poor result there, in 9th, and Boyer Milan rounding out the top 10. So that's our driver standings. Team standings we move on to. It's getting a little bit more interesting, maybe. And the ACL Zakspeed move further ahead, having been caught up by Edge last time out. So they have managed to move on. So they've got 186 points. Edge Esports on 136. Epic doing a very good first year, still in 3rd with 110, still very much in touch and distance for the title. Evolution, also a new team, in 4th with 80 points. Hawkeye, who continue their sort of resurgence, I suppose, this year with 73 points. Ahead of Nordschen Racing with 51. Storm with 42. Flag to Flag with 38. Red Archer move with 36. And Eval with 31. Interesting, by the way, that most of the new teams are in that top 10. Just a little, that's not normally what you'd expect to see necessarily. It does mean that maybe some of the more established teams need to fuck your ideas up, lads. So on that, we come to best and worsts. Oh, this is always the fun part, isn't it? It's what I like to watch and listen to. So if we had to go through, I'll stick to Jake's format, shall I? Should we go with best drivers? Best driver? Kacper, let's start with you.
Right, best driver. Let's see. To be honest, well, it's easy to give it to Siebel right now, isn't it? Because he has completely obliterated his competition, essentially. But I think, to be honest, I'm gonna give it to Peter Berlak for actually doing a fantastic job out there and improving on what we've seen from him before. And I think being on a on a fantastic kind of wave, essentially, and who knows, maybe we'll see him up there and fighting for the wins sometime this season, even. So yeah, I think that this is a very positive race from Berlak.
Interesting. Ben, can you disagree, or we're going with that?
Whilst I won't disagree, I think that's a very fair shout for Peter Burlack there. I'm going to one-up you with Ricardo Costa, I think, who finished one space ahead of him. Equally, same reason, really. I think Ricardo he's been there or thereabouts at the start of the season. But I think he really showed something else here at Montreal, showed some really good pace. He was sort of sticking, actually, with the ACR guys in the first stint. Just dropped back a bit over the latter two stints there. But no, Ricardo Costa for me.
Fair enough. Which hat am I wearing now?
You can't pick an ACR driver. I'm not letting you do that.
Well, all right. Well, in that case, I've got to still give a huge shout out to Alex. He didn't put foot wrong. The guy qualified first, led from the start,
Biased.
won it. It's very much a Rudy Van Buren race from Alex Siegel there, if I'm honest. But if I can't pick him, can I pick Risto? No. No, fair enough. I'd probably go with Costa as well. To be honest, Costa was the one that, on the pit wall as ACR, I was watching out for. He was my one that I was being careful of, thinking we could be, he's our worry here, so that's enough for me. I did very much shout out to Burlack, though. The fact that you're still racing to the very final corner of the final lap, I love that, and that is probably why he will do very well here as well. He has had a couple of podiums, so that that elusive win will come to him, I'm sure, this year. Now the one that people love. Worst. Oh dear. Worst drivers. Now we might have given you a little hints as we've already spoken. I'm going to come back to you, Ben, the other way though this time. Your worst driver of the race.
Oh, this is a tough one. I think it's a toss-up between Menno Klont and the Storm. I don't think he's really been matching what Deval can do. He's, I think that's sort of becoming shades of Madcape last year of a one-driver team, effectively scoring all the points, which is not really ideal in terms of teams championship. You want two drivers scoring points there, so I'd like to see a little more there, I guess. Equally, Madcape, I don't really understand saving engines. If that's what they were doing, I don't really understand that this early in the season. We're only a third of the way in. Maybe they'll come and prove us wrong later on in the season, but judging on face value here, both cars retiring, within 24 laps, it's not really good in my opinion.
Already throwing out your potential team worst there.
Yeah, I think I've realised I've alluded into that, but both the same really at this point.
Damn you for not sticking to the format. Now
I've got to keep you on your toes in this temporary role. So.
I know. Well, yeah. This seat is, and that's why I've not sat down.
Literal standing.
Literally standing in. Fair enough, Kacper?
Drivers. Oh, I mean, I definitely agree that Menno Klont is not showing any doing Storm any favors right now. Otherwise, there were a few drivers that were kind of disappointing. We can't really pick fight out because we don't really know what will happen. But to be honest, I think Tom Parker is a good shout because he has just first he had the little incident early in the race and then has not shown anything the entire race long. So I'd say, honestly, my shout goes for Tom Parker, who really should improve.
I think that's probably quite fair. To be honest, he had a few instances as well. Fidek did have a bit of pace, but yeah, with that disconnect, you can't really call it. I mean, that's pretty unfair, I suppose. For me, where am I going to go with this?
I'll pick ACR for this.
Yeah, I'll allow it.
I can, but I won't.
Bias.
Well, if they're worse, then there's 25 others worse. So no, he's going to hate me for this. Ben Hole. Ultimately, I mean, obviously the guys at DNF. Yeah, there's reason behind that. I agree with you on the Madcape side of stuff with them. I really hate the fact that they haven't chosen to finish a race. That's particularly poor in my mind, but I'll come on to that in teams in a minute. Whereas, yeah, for me, Ben, if we're expecting that team to be up there towards the top, and they're both nowhere near. Florian at least qualified quite high this time out.
Yeah.
So maybe the car is there a little bit, and he did carry on and finish and score points. What does Ben bring to the team at the moment? If I'm honest, I'm really harsh. I'm sorry there. But I hope it was a bit like this last year, and then the second half of the season came out with some incredible results coming fourth and things like that. So yeah, let's hope it's just a slow learning curve for him. That would be my pick, if I'm honest. So we're all picking different people, but hey, we don't like to be definitive and know exactly what's going on here. So, best team, guys. Now, bear with me.
I wonder what he's going to pick.
Yeah. If you don't pick certain things, there might be a knock on the door. So, best team, Ben. Go for it.
Oh, I think it's going to be ACR. Yeah, really best team. No, you do get. You're right. You get 50% of my best team award. The other
that's pretty good.
Other 50% going to Epic for continually doing really well as a new team. Really, they've been doing really well all season, and they're keeping that up and have a really good result. P5 and 6.
I think I very much agree with Ben on both ACR and Epic. Well, ACR, to be fair, was completely dominant, but I think the mess up from Capit. I mean, that's not. I mean, that's not a team call necessarily with him making a mistake, but it's kind of looking as a team overall. We had a bit of trouble with him. Interestingly enough, I may go for Edge again. Two cars up in top 10. And Burlack and while Time did show was a little disappointing. I mean, both of them were in top 7 as well, and nearly knocking on that podium from Burlack. So I mean, I think I'll go for Edge this time.
Nice.
No, I think that's a fair shout with Edge, particularly to make the most of someone who had a back of the grid to still get you 2 top 10 there. Yeah, I'm not allowed to give it to my guys, even though they deserve it. So I would also pick Epic in this occasion, though. I think they've been particularly good. Obviously, was a bit of damage there and things, and they were unlucky actually to lose out 4th in that final corner as well. So they were there knocking on the door, no doubt, to be that close. They were only actually a couple of seconds off a podium, really, themselves. So actually, they've done pretty well there. And particularly as a new team, doing very well. And as a Martex customer, absolutely destroying the parent company as well.
Very fair point, actually, yeah.
So that's, as an engine manufacturer, if one of my teams was being beaten by a customer, that's kind of embarrassing. So there you go. On that, worst teams.
Sorry, I mean, I've already partially alluded to mine, so
no surprise.
I will stick with Mad Cape. I think, as same reason as you pointed out, Mike. It's I don't think it's really acceptable that we got teams stopping early to save engines and stuff. It's not really on, in my opinion.
I definitely agree with Mad Cape being absolutely horrible in terms of how they went about this in terms of the engines. But I think another team that's worth a shout, and we've mentioned it before, is Street Fighter. Just not there, and just not quite able to do anything really. Then we also have Adonis, who brought one car, and that car DNF as well.
One car and one didn't finish. Brilliant.
So honestly, I think I'll give it to Adonis for I don't think Iovsky was up there anyway in the entire race. So I think Adonis.
Yeah, I'm siding. I mean, both great calls, but yeah, I'm very much siding with Adonis there. I think basic number 1 is get 2 cars to the grid.
Exactly.
Even Madcape did that, even if they pulled one off halfway through the race. There were still 2 cars sat on that grid. So arguably, and Adonis should know better. They're a very established team. They've been up there battling for championships. Less said about that better, but they have been up there doing very, very well. So they are, a great team. And although arguably they did beat their manager, I suppose about the only thing they can say in that race. It's not great for Adonis. Let's hope they bounce back as well. But yeah, Madcape, Ben, you could pretty much record that and play that every week at the moment. I think that Madcape is your worst team. But hopefully things around the corner. If they watch the show and everything else, and they watch the scrutineer, maybe they'll learn something and move on forwards. They are doing stuff. They are bringing in new drivers and different people behind the scenes that I can tell. So hopefully something may come from that, I suppose. We can only hope that everyone. But it's very competitive this year, up and down the field. So actually, some years what they're doing probably would be enough. Same with Adonis. Most years we'd have probably seen a driver or 2 have not raced this year. The fact it's round 6 and this is the first car that's not been there says a lot. I do worry for Adonis. When we were talking about worrying for Madcape and stuff at the end of the year, if this carries on, I do worry for them.
Yep.
I very much hope not, but we've got we'll find out, I suppose. So we've got round 7 coming up, and we go back to France. when was the last time we went there?
Yeah, a while ago, wasn't it, that we last went to France? I can't remember. It was back when it was Main Court, put it that way. A good few years ago.
Brilliant. Get the wine out, mercy for Google, that sort of stuff. Fantastic. Paul Ricard, we're heading there. It's going to be fantastic, really. It's a new track. There's different. It's going to be very because it's a new track. We haven't got teams that have got some sort of base setup or anything like that. So actually, it could throw up a few more interesting changes. Particularly the new teams might have a bit less disadvantage than sometimes here. So any predictions ahead of time, guys? I know we don't normally do this, but I'm just going to throw it out there. Anything you're hearing about Paul Ricard? Anything you're expecting to happen? Anything you think will do well?
I'm expecting a lot of track limit penalties, to be honest. If you haven't seen Paul Ricard, the entire place is just run off. There is a track there somewhere, but the rest of it is all just run off. And I know there's already discussions from drivers about what should and shouldn't be a track limit and what their opinions are on it. I know the DC will obviously do their clarifications and exceptions, very soon. But I think that's going to be a key area to watch. Actually, will be track limits, especially in qualifying. And as you allude to as well, setup as well, because it's a new track. We don't really know, what the baseline setup's going to be here. It's also quite tough to set up. We've got, 2 massive long straights down the back, and then equally the final sector is all sort of medium downforce corners. So you can't really run low wings because you need the grip in the corners, but you need the top speed. So it's going to be a really interesting one to see where people go on setup as well.
Anything you, Kacper, at all? Maybe we'll see your hard tyres used. Hey?
Maybe.
I wouldn't be surprised in that way because it's very the corners are actually separated by quite a bit, big straight. So I'll be surprised if there was enough time for the tires to cool down, even the harder compounds. I think it's going to be an interesting choice, and because the fast nature of the track, I think, we will see harder compounds, not necessarily maybe hards, although we've seen hards work this season. I have not so fond opinions of hards last season, but this season they seem to be working okay. I think it's going to be interesting, and Paul Ricard can definitely create some fantastic racing, some massive braking zones as well, so I think it's going to be an interesting race.
Fantastic. If it's anything like Canada, I will be very happy, obviously. But Canada itself as a race was absolutely brilliant as well. Superleague pulling out all the stops once again. If you haven't caught it, you can go back onto the GPVWC's YouTube channel and you can catch up on the whole race there, brought to you by SimNews.TV. And also, we've also got that race coming, the new Paul Ricard race coming up for round 7 on the 24th of May. That's live on GPVWC YouTube and Facebook of WTF1. Nearly made the hour. Classic one that I'm going to make all year.
Yeah.
But we've also got a lot more coming from Sim News, so we also bring you the Formula Challenge and the Super Cup the 2 nights before on GPVWC's YouTube. So make sure you subscribe and follow that. And then I'm back with the scrutineer just before as well on the Monday. So there's an awful lot happening that week. So make sure you subscribe, like our Facebook, all that sort of stuff. You'll find out everything that's going on from all of that. You can also catch us on Twitter with SLShowSN or hashtag SLShow. We'll catch all your bits there. And hopefully if you do post a few questions to us or something like that, or a few opinions, we might even bring them up next time, eh? Leave Jake. I'll leave him in a pile for Jake, just sat here waiting for him next time. So make sure you're following us. But thank you very much, Ben and Kacper, for having me, I suppose, but for joining me.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, that was lovely.
And all you guys out there, make sure you're watching the race next Thursday. And if you haven't watched anything else, make sure you subscribe and enjoy and get involved. It's fantastic to see everything that happens in GPVWC and the Super League. And thank you very much. I've been the scrutineer on the Super League show with Ben and Kacper. Thank you.